local limestone in the Limelight. I'm going to say that the genesis for this program was when I was in high school. I was helping a neighbor take some cedar posts out of the swamp in the town of Sevastopol, and we were carrying them past a pile of rubble of stones that had a whole bunch of debris lodged next to it, and I asked what that was, and he said, well, that's an old lime kiln. And I had no idea what a lime kiln was, and over the years I've read and heard about different stories about lime kilns. We're always looking for new members and people with ideas for more programs, so please, if you have any ideas, we'd be more than happy to entertain them. And even better, if you would like to present a program, we'd be more than happy to facilitate that. So, to begin this program, I'd like to start out with a few lines from local papers regarding Sevastopol lime businesses. And we're going to start with the first mention of a Sevastopol lime kiln. Mr. Robert Laurie is going to tear down his smallest lime kiln and replace it with a larger one to keep pace with the growing demand for his lime. He has already burned and shipped up to this date as much lime as he manufactured through the whole of last season. And that quote from the newspaper is August 3rd, 1871. The Laurie Quarry is still existing along Bayshore Drive, and it was first opened up to provide lime for the building trades. And a second quote from 1 year later is, the new boat, the Katie Laurie, will go into the lime trade between here and the west shore of Green Bay in 1872. The second mention of a lime kiln in the town of Sevastopol is Dominic Kemp, assessor of the town, and keeps his lime kiln burning. And that is the lime kiln that I witnessed when I was a child, and that's the only mention that we have of any historical effect to that Dominic Kemp was in the lime kiln business. The third lime kiln was Adam Simon, and Adam Simon had two lime kilns just north of the St. Joseph Catholic Cemetery on the Egg Harbor Road. And Adam Simon advertised prolifically in the local papers, and so he received very favorable coverage and glowing details. Adam Simon, the Sevastopol lime man, was in the city on Tuesday. Mr. Simon will have a kiln of fresh lime ready for delivery on Friday of this week. He has the contract for furnishing the lime to be used by John Gettleman for fixing up the store building for Lyon Brothers, about 20 barrels having already been delivered. In those days, lime was advertised for 40 to 60 cents a barrel. Now, I don't know how big a barrel is, but with all the work that was involved, I can assure you that these people didn't get rich with all the physical labor that they did. Here's another quote about Adam Simon, and it shows you it doesn't hurt to advertise in the paper. The hustling lime dealer of Sevastopol has just finished burning another kiln of his gilt-edged lime and is ready to take orders for the same. November 23rd, 1893. And the fourth lime kiln is John Bishno, and we are fortunate to have been invited to tour this existing lime kiln. We actually burned a pile of brush in it, and it works like a charm yet. It's located on the Ann and Irv Schmegel farm, just a few miles from here. So all of you are invited to come and take a look at it and witness existing lime kiln from about 1902. John Bishno says that the demand for lime is so great as the season advances that he is unable to supply all that is needed, although he keeps hustling both day and night. This will give one an idea of the amount of building that's going on in this town and vicinity. That's a quote from 1902. And in 1905, John Bishno and his family moved to Harper, Kansas. John Bishno had two lime kilns located on Irv and Ann Schmegel's farm. One of them is in poor shape and the other one is in fairly decent shape yet. So we'll be excited to go out there, and Carl will explain how a lime kiln actually operates. There's a mention of a fifth lime kiln from the newspaper archives, and it's under the Town of Sevastopol News. It says, Dennis A. Vroman has built a lime kiln on his place last fall. He expects to supply material after the middle of May, May 2nd, 1903. And to show you the precarious nature of life in pioneer times, on January 23rd, 1904, Dennis Vroman was killed by a falling tree. Mr. Vroman leaves a widow and 7 children, the oldest being 14 and the youngest a babe still in arms. And we don't know the location of this lime kiln, but we suspect it's somewhere near the Sevastopol Lake Harbor town line. So with that, I'd like to introduce our main speaker for the day. He has been an educator, a naturalist, a conservationist, environmentalist, and a solid citizen of the town of Sevastopol for many years. I'd like to introduce Mr. Carl Scholz.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you. I'd like to start with some thank yous, if that's all right. Don, of course, for your nice presentation and the invitation to make this presentation. Thank you. And I'd like to thank the Historical Society for arranging programs such as this, and Linda for all her efforts in getting this program going. I like to talk a little bit about the history of Sevastopol, and one thing that always strikes me as being extremely interesting is the fact that it was John Peter Simon who suggested that Sevastopol be named Sevastopol, and he did that because he saw the relationship between the area in the Russian Crimea at Sevastopol, the limestone rock, and the soil. So he suggested that it be named Sevastopol, and with a whoop and a holler, the town board at that time adopted Sevastopol as a name. And incidentally, do you know what Sevastopol, that's a Greek name, and do you know what it means? The place of glory. How many of you knew that you were living in a place of glory? Another interesting thing about this immediate community is Institute. How many know why it's called Institute? Anybody here know the fact that the Roman Catholics in this area in the 1800s built a school called the Institute, and it was a boarding school, and of course the community is now known as Institute. The dictionary, the dictionary explanation of an institute is a place of learned endeavors. So we have a number of learned endeavors in the community. The Institute Saloon is one of them, and the school here at Sevastopol, of course, is also a place of learned endeavors. So when you're saying you're going to a place of learned endeavors, better make it clear as to where you're going. When you came here today in a car, you walked through into the door. You notice a beautiful limestone decorating the front of this building. And without limestone, you would not have been able to do that. Limestone contains the most important mineral in the world. Without, there are over 200 uses of limestone, and two of them are, of course, is a setting agent for Portland cement, which makes concrete. The other is steel, iron. It would be impossible to have steel without limestone, because that's the flux. So Don mentioned that I would explain the operation of a lime kiln, and I'll do that. There are several kinds. The mixed kind is the kind that they had here, and most of those were mixed kilns where the some material kindling was placed at the bottom of the kiln. Then some heavier wood was placed on top of that. Then the rock was put on top of it. Another layer of wood, and until it was filled. I mentioned that you walked into this building, and you would not have been able to have an automobile. There's some steel in an automobile. There's the setting agent in that walk is the calcium hydrate. And then, of course, the beautiful front of the building is also limestone. So without the limestone, we wouldn't have, as I mentioned before, we wouldn't have steel, iron, we wouldn't have concrete, nor 200 other products. Ruth and I visited the Rockwell Lime Company in Rockwood, Wisconsin, and they gave me this little booklet, and they celebrated their 100th anniversary in 2006. I have some show and tell items. The largest rock there is a piece of hematite magnetite that made Minnesota famous. The hematite magnetite ore, and that's how the steel was made. The ore was placed in a large furnace, and the limestone was a flux. And the heat of the mixture resulted in the carbon dioxide being driven off, and the resulting mixture was a calcium silicate. The iron ore has a lot of silicate in it, so after the carbon dioxide is driven off, the silicate combined with the calcium, and you had iron. So that's a piece that came from a boulder train on Matthew Road. In fact, because I have another piece like that. It weighs about 200 pounds, but I didn't have the energy to. When Don called me about this program, I asked him if we could start with 425 million years ago. And that was the age of, that's when the limestone was formed during the Silurian period, which was the age of corals. I brought a few fossils on the table for show and tell, and this shows some of the fossils during the Silurian period, 425 years ago. Meet Linda, that's fine. There, fossilized sea floor. I have a piece here that looks something like that. A piece of the sea floor. It has a number of fossils in it. Most of them are the brachiopods. There's a good example of one of the quarry operations in Door County. Next slide, please. This is might even have been taken at 12 Point. At 12 Point, the Toff family came to Door County to operate a quarry and sell the rock. And here's one of the examples of their quarry. That rock was shipped to Michigan and Chicago and some other sites for the as a flux for the making iron steel. I mentioned the mixed kiln type that you'll be seeing at the Irv Schmegel farm, but most of them today are of the flare type. They have a large cylinder. Usually they're large cylinders that rotate. They use fuel, usually iron, usually coal. They operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the temperature is 2,200 degrees. That converts the calcium carbonate to calcium oxide. And this is an example of one of the large kilns. This would be similar to the one that is found at Rockland. That's Rockland. There was Irv's with the kiln that you'll be seeing in just a little while. I think it's important for us to realize that how important the limestone is. So when you're picking rocks, don't disparage the rocks that you're picking because they're very valuable. I should have mentioned how calcium oxides, which is extremely active chemical, how that is used as a studying agent, calcium hydroxide. It's slacked. They take the calcium oxide, add water to it, and you get a very hot chemical reaction and the product then is calcium hydroxide. And calcium hydroxide is a setting agent that is used for Portland cement. Yes, the Silurian period with all the creatures. There were billions of creatures, and when they died over a period of 425 million years, you got the formation of the limestone. I always carry a few fossils in my pocket. One of those is the official fossil of the state, and there were billions of those. That's a trilobite. That's tri is for three, lobe is for body, and ite is for family. So that's a trilobite. If any of you are ever in Kenosha, in they have a beautiful natural history museum, and they have a big exhibit of fossils, including many trilobites. Some are 2 feet long. And there's a fellow named Paleo Joe, a paleontologist, who presents programs that are only standing room only, over, and primarily deals with the trilobites. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
How did they quarry that stone? Was it just manual pick and axe, or did they use
More pick and axe, and later, of course, they used dynamite also, but most of it was pick and axe. They at the Door County Museum, Jenny is here. Jenny Hain is here. Is that big crowbar still in the basement of the library, Jenny?
The big crowbar is now in the display. You had the label for that log, that ice display, and it's upstairs now. It's been carried up, and it weighs, I don't know.
And how long is it?
About as wide as this room, it seems.
Oh, so that indicates how they pried out the rock. Unbelievable. Yes, go ahead.
Do you know how long you would have to burn to produce the lime?
Yes, and the mixed kiln type, which is the kilns that we had in Door County, except for the one at Gardner, there was a twin kiln there. That was a flare type, where the heat was supplied from outside the kiln. But in the mixed type, it would take at least a day of burning. I mentioned that day of burning because at the top point they have a kiln that the diameter was too great for the height. So when they burned it, the cinder burned out. And it never did operate, so they thought they could have another product for sale, but they were never able to make the calcium oxide. Yes, sir, in the rear.
Just wondered how they crushed. How big were the blocks that they would take out, and how did they get those crushed up?
Well, the smaller the better. But they did have some rock crushers too that were used, and in fact, they had to have rock crushers. They were tremendously big equipment. I own a rock crusher that someone was given to me by the Fisher family.
Does it run on steam power, or?
Yes, no, by belt power.
Horsepower?
Yeah, so they evidently did have belt power at that time. Yes.
This slide explains this very well, that they would chunk it up into 1.5 to 2 inch
Yeah.
chunks of limestone, layer it limestone, either coal or wood for the fuel, and just place those layers like that. And it took about a week, so it was not uncommon to have several lime kilns in the same area. So the first day you would be loading one, 3 to 5 days, or 3 days maybe to fire it and cook it down to the limestone, 2 days to cool, and then a day to unload. And so if you were rotating from kiln to kiln, you never had any downtime. You were constantly producing that lime. And you would just drag it out through the bottom there where the eye is. It
I
would
just
fall
wondered
through.
how that crushing happened.
Mostly by hand.
Sometimes it was by hand. I think the early pioneers went, yeah. Big hammers.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
Was the lime used locally, or did they produce enough to ship other places?
most of it was shipped other places. However, some was used locally. It would be take the calcium oxide, slack it, and then use it for a number of purposes. Whitewash would be one. Calcimine was another one. They added salt to it, and that was used as a paint, a white paint. But most of the local, what we call lime, was crushed limestone. It was not burned, so it was just crushed limestone, and that was used in barns. In fact, I think that today, if you're a grade A milk producer, you must use lime on the floors of the barns. But otherwise, and some of the limestone, of course, was used for other purposes, for docks and maybe armoring around White Houses. Yes, Donna.
Carl, the limestone kilns in Sevastopol were small. Wouldn't they only be used for barn building and house foundations around here?
Yes, they were used locally, and that's why there were so many. Every community needed lime for setting agent and mortar, caulking for log buildings, and of course for making concrete. Yes.
The Door County Historical Museum, downtown Sturgeon Bay, Jenny works there, she can answer any questions, but they have an excellent exhibit on lime kilns. I took my grandchildren there a couple weeks ago, and this is just a paragraph from that exhibit, and it says, the reconstruction following the Great Chicago Fire in 1871 demanded huge quantities of lime. One operation in Little Sturgeon, operated by F.B. Gardner, was reported to produce 160 barrels of lime per day. So, and
Well,
that was
thank
all.
you. That's impressive.
We think this is across the bay.
Yeah,
Near
that's on
Needles,
Raleigh's Bay in the town of Gardner. Interestingly, Gardner and Harris were friends, and Harris was the founder of the ship canal, the father of the ship canal. But they were good friends, and Gardner, of course, had a big lime operation.
Of course, being on the bay, it was easy to just load it onto the barge or ship or
Yes,
vessel.
they
wherever
had a
truck,
dock.
Ship it down to Chicago.
Any other, yes, sir.
You may have been the person that taught me on some hike somewhere about the Limelight.
Yes,
I don't know if you want to.
yeah, thank you for asking that question, yes. You like to be in the limelight? The Greek theaters, many years ago, that's how they lighted the theaters, was with limelight. If you heat lime, and I've done it, I've had a little model kiln. If you heat it, it gives off a brilliant light. And in fact, if you're in the Two Rivers, Rockland area at night, if you look over sort of west of Michigan, that area, you can see the limelight from these kilns. It's a brilliant light. And that, I don't think I mentioned that lime, the calcium hydrate, is the oldest chemical in the world. It dates back to, I had the date here somewhere, yeah, about 2,500 years BC. So that was early days. Evidently, they knew how to burn the lime. I think it was burned in pits in the ground. But it was used, and of course they used it for one of the 200 uses that we have today. Yes,
Did you tell them about building your kiln?
Oh, yeah.
Your lime kiln? And how much it took to build it?
Yeah, I thought we didn't get it didn't work, or do you have that slide, Linda?
I did run out to the
Oh,
farm.
anyway, took a picture and our computers weren't compatible. Anyway, yes, because that's an important part of rural America, I built a lime kiln at the farm. One of our employees, Trevor Hasenjager, and I hauled 15 pickup truck loads of erratic rocks from a boulder train. That caused big trouble some years ago, didn't it, Ruth, the boulder train? I came home one day and I said, I bought a train. You bought a train. Our children don't have shoes. Anyway, there's a tract on Matthew Road that has a boulder train. There must be some others in the county. I don't know of any others, but I've seen thousands of rocks from that boulder train. And some are at the farm. There's one that one of the rocks is a red granite rock, and that's a memorial to Gerhard Miller. And that's what he wanted, was the official state rock and a cedar tree, a white cedar. So that's his, yes?
What is a boulder train?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. It's where a glacier's dropped millions of erratic rocks, just millions of them. And the rocks in Door County, well, 87% are that you pick off a field are limestone. But in a boulder train, it's just the reverse. About 87% are erratics, or granites and gneisses. And at the farm, if you want to see a nice exhibit of rocks from a boulder train, that island in the parking lot is from a boulder. Many different rocks. See, those are all so-called crystalline rocks, or erratic rocks from the boulder train.
And would those withstand the heat then? Those would withstand the heat of,
Yes,
of the...
yeah, see, crystalline rocks do. But the limestone would not. Donald, when they and Ervil explained the operation of the one on the Schmegel farm, but they had the interior was lined with crystalline rocks, and the exterior was limestone. I told they didn't have enough crystalline rocks, and so that operated that way. Oh, thank you, Linda.
That's where we're going on the field trip, right?
Yes.
Is dolomite the same as limestone?
Yes, that's a very good question. Thank you. I know dolomite is over 50% magnesium carbonate, and limestone here is really dolostone. It's about 55% calcium carbonate and 45% magnesium carbonate. So that's what we have here is a double carbonate of calcium and magnesium. It sounds like a beverage.
So that's what we have here, is it?
That's what we have here. So we should really call it dolostone. It's dolostone. There are many, many different kinds of limestone, many. And yes.
So when it comes to using it, applying it for, say, setting concrete, is it preferable to have limestone lime rather than dolostone lime, or is it irrelevant?
That wouldn't make any difference. I suspect that the Portland cement, the setting agent, is calcium hydroxide, and that wouldn't make any difference whether it had some magnesium in it or not. But the reason you're familiar with the big quarry on Bayshore Road, that's really a big quarry, one of the largest in the state, maybe the largest. Most of that rock went to the steel mills in lower Lake Michigan. However, as the steel industry became more sophisticated, they moved to Drummond Island, where that was pure calcium carbonate, whereas this one had the magnesium, and that would combine with the steel. Although they do have some steel that has magnesium in it for some special purposes, but in general, the magnesium created a problem with the quality of the steel. So. Yes, sir.
How much of the limestone from around here would have been used for actual building purpose?
Most of it.
Stone.
Most of it, I think. I mean,
Not for making concrete or anything, but just.
Oh, for construction and building.
Purpose.
Yes, quite a bit of it was. Some are right outside the door here is a good example.
Where would that have been? Would that have been shipped? Be used other
Oh,
places?
a lot of that, it was like the stone used out here was picked off stone fences. It's been weathered. Yes, Don.
Can I answer that, Carl?
Yeah.
Typically, on the more commercial operations, the building stone was the premier product and brought the most money. And what they ran through the kilns was the chips that were left over, so they could use up everything.
Thank you.
But at one time, you didn't have a home unless you had Landon stone. And that's limestone from a large quarry in southeastern Wisconsin at Landon. In fact, there's a home on Glidden Drive that's entirely Landon stone. And near Shawano, right on 29, I think maybe it burned, but there was a limestone castle. It was a restaurant. It was castle made out of limestone.
Didn't they use the lime itself was used in the mixture for mortar as
Yes,
a bonding agent? And
yes,
didn't,
even today, the masons buy lime, calcium hydroxide, and that's mixed with sand for mortar.
And didn't the farmers also discover that putting lime on the fields helped reduce the acidity in the soil, so it was not uncommon to
Yes,
spread the ash from
yes.
the limestone cooking
That's-
onto the fields?
The ground limestone is a major use of ground limestone is to raise the pH of the soil. However, what is the pH in the York County soil, Max? 8.5. Anyway, we don't need we don't need lime, but most areas they need to apply lime to the soil to bring the pH down, particularly for alfalfa. That's why alfalfa does so well, because of the high pH. Another product that's used for field and garden application is marl. It's clay. So thanks, this will lead to something else that I should mention. Is that all right? Anyway, marl, we have the lakes in Door County are marl lakes. The bottom is marl, and it goes into suspension very readily when there's any turbulence, and therefore you have a marl-colored water, and in some cases it's not a good to have a lot of that in suspension, because every time it settles, it more readily goes into suspension because of the size of the particles. Although when they built the stabilization lagoon for the sanitary district here, and sanitary district number 1 for Sevastopol, they have 2 lagoons, a primary and a secondary lagoon, and they had $10,000 worth of volcanic ash. But when they started digging for those lagoons, they found that the material was all marl. So they never used a bit of that, because that marl is completely impervious to water. So any other questions that lead to something else that might be of interest? Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Don and Linda. Oh, here, there's some show and tell. Forgot about that. There's some, in fact, do you see all those poor quality brachiopods? First come, first serve. So if you want some here, and they, all the brachiopods are usually agatized. So if you're a lapidarist, you can take them, cut them, and make jewelry. So just take whatever you wish. Oh, here's one piece. This isn't for taking. That's a piece of the coral. That, in fact, a lot of the I don't know where it came from, but definitely is a piece of. At the farm, we had a lot of coral fossils on the fences. I looked for one. They're all gone. So people, and some were some pretty good sized pieces. Every one is gone. who was telling me just today that where someone had a specimen of some, Donna, were you telling, oh.
Where I was telling you that I flipped over that rock and I got what, Max? What was the name of this?
There's a cephalopod,
Oh, the cephalopod. Yeah, here is part of the cephalopod. Here. And this is probably the way the bottom of the Silurian Sea looked. See this? In fact, if you look at the bottom of the bay in Sturgeon Bay, it looks like this. You know why? The quagga mussels. So this is a good example of. Oh, and I even brought some lime. Does somebody want to see what lime looks like? Here. But this is called barn lime, of course. It's ground limestone. And if you want to know what the specific gravity, the weight of this is, try to lift it. It's really heavy.
Carl, is the big long one there, isn't that a cephalopod?
Yes, that big.
Picture?
Oh, there. Yeah, that long. Some of them are 20 feet long. And this is a piece of one here. There's a piece of a cephalopod. Yes. The on A, there was a track that had a lot of exposed rock, and that had some beautiful cephalopods in it. But the fellow who bought that property prohibits anybody from even looking at those. But I remember that was a popular spot for geology tours.
Thank you very much, Carl.
You're welcome.
Super.